Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar co-hosted by Adswerve and Google, which is all about measurement. My name is Kelly Hayes. I am the Director of Account Management for Agencies here at Adswerve, and I'm joined by Nirmal, who is the Head of Sales for Google Marketing Platform at Google. Nirms here leads the GMP business with Google, and she has a dedicated focus on empowering mid-market customers and agencies throughout the US and Canada. She's been at Google for 18 years, which is quite an accomplishment. And for the past couple of years, her role specifically centered around driving the strategy, adoption, and growth for Google's comprehensive GMP suite, which includes the likes of Search Ads 360, TV 360, Campaign Manager, and Google Analytics. Nirms is deeply passionate about solving complex measurement challenges, simplifying online sales marketing strategies to help deliver impactful and measurable business results for her customers in the dynamic digital landscape, which is ever changing. Nirms, thank you so much for co-hosting with me today. I'm really happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. And I love that you're already calling me Nirms, because when someone calls me Nirmal, I feel like I'm in trouble. So first of all, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules and joining us today. I'm so thrilled, Kelly, that I'm here with you and the Adswerve team.
No, we really appreciate the time. So in terms of today, we want to make sure that you take away a couple of key things. We are very excited to tackle the myths surrounding paid media measurement, because it's often seen as sometimes really complex or overwhelming just because there's so much in the space today. But we're really here to show you that it doesn't have to be complicated. It can very much be simplified, and we'll kind of explore the real challenges, debunk a couple of myths, and provide some really practical solutions for building out a robust measurement strategy. So in terms of what that looks like from an agenda perspective, we're first going to define what measurement really means. And the reason for that is because it can mean different things to different people. I, for example, work with a lot of different agencies, and measurement looks different from an agency lens versus when we're talking to an end client themselves. We're then going to kind of debunk some of those myths and dive into some common misconceptions we hear in the market, just because, again, measurement's been a long-standing topic for a while, and these days it just feels like it's top of mind, but we're still facing the same challenges. From there, we're going to kind of talk about a roadmap. And at Adswerve here, we love roadmaps because it really just helps paint a picture of what to do now, next, and later. So we're going to go through that together. We'll do some Q&A, and then we'll finish off our session today. So diving right in, we're going to show you first a little quick QR code and poll. We want you to tell us what comes to mind when you think of measurement. And we'll give everyone a couple of seconds to pull out their phone, do the quick QR code, and then we'll move to the next slide where the poll will show. All right, let's see what's coming up here. Tracking, okay, conversion, attribution.
Insights, I love that.
All very much very relevant things. Let's see, funnel, unique, that's great. The measurement's definitely unique to every person, every client.
Now attribution seems to be the winner.
Yep, not surprising. Nirms, when it comes to measurement, how would you define it based on your experience?
Well, that's a great question, Kelly. And for me, measurement is all about finding out how marketing actions lead to real business results. I like keeping things simple. It's about connecting what we do and what we achieve. So think of marketing measurement like a health check, for the businesses that we manage. So it helps us understand if marketing efforts are making us stronger and healthier. And if I were to build on that, what's interesting is that for the audience that has joined us today, and I know that we have a lot of marketers, we have a lot of agencies, and sometimes the focus is on different parts of the checkup, if you will, when it comes to measurement. So for example, marketers who are joining us are often looking at overall diagnosis, which is, are we achieving our sales targets? Are we gaining valuable customers? Is our brand health improving? And it's all about why behind these numbers. That's what matters. So metrics like, measurement growth, customer acquisition cost, customer lifetime value, brand affinity, and brand lift. Whereas for our agency partners on the call, they usually tend to zoom in on the vital signs of media campaigns itself. So are the ads performing well? Are we reaching the right audience? Are we optimizing effectively? And this is the how of that granular data. So be it looking at impressions or click-through rates, conversion rates, or CPCs, if you will. So in my mind, measurement, it doesn't have to be a complex ecosystem, and to make it work, the most important or the fundamental thing is, are we sharing these health goals, if you will, the KPIs, and easy access to all the test results and data? And is there a clear way, as you said, to track that progress? Do we have the right reporting frameworks so everybody's on the same page? So for me, it's like wheels of the same cart, marketers and agencies, and that's how like the connective tissue is what measurement is all about.
Yeah, it kind of, I completely agree with you. And I think if we think about one of the biggest myths that I know we're going to talk about is, things can live in different places, and it's making sure that all of that comes together. Because you're right, it is, everybody's in the same cart. You don't just need the front wheels, you need the back wheels too to keep moving.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think that, let's be honest, like that brings us to our very first myth. So, that's there we go. And let's be honest, we're talking about this, but paid media measurement is challenging. It's really challenging, but it doesn't have to be an unsolvable puzzle, absolutely not. And we hear things like it's hard to connect ad spend to actual sales, it sits with different teams, and either marketers or agency partners don't have access to it, or attribution feels like guesswork, etc. So when it comes to the first myth that data silos are an insurmountable barrier, well, most clients, and I hope that most of you who are joining us today agree with that there are truly data silos, and it is just how it is. And I often hear clients say we are drowning in data, but we are starving for insights. And I think that's that. So this is not a myth. This is a reality that fragmented data is a real challenge when it comes to measurement, and that combined with lack of clearly defined KPIs, whether that's business KPIs or media KPIs, and a lack of single source of truth to determine what's working for the brand or the business and what doesn't, can be truly frustrating for business owners. I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I feel that I empathize with that. And for our agency partners, they might not even have access to a lot of this data that that marketers have, or may have just access to partial data set. So, for the audience, if I were to make this really tactical, think about it. There's website analytics, there's CRM, there are ad platforms, and can all report different numbers, creating a completely disjointed view. So sales might track leads in one system while marketing focuses on website conversion. And this lack of unified view, for the lack of better word, makes it incredibly difficult to understand the true impact of what marketing is driving on sales. And we've seen our customers spend significant resources and time just trying to reconcile these conflicts. And if I were to top this up with compliance and privacy, that's another layer. However, I say all this to say this is not a myth. This is a true reality. And like, Kelly, you and I were talking earlier, it's not an unsolvable problem. The crucial first step towards this solution is simplifying and mapping out where all the data resides, with who it resides, and then conducting a thorough audit, if you will.
Yep. No, I completely agree. And I know we're going to chat about audits a little bit later. And, having worked on both agency and in the past life brand side, like it sometimes it just starts with a conversation, right? It's just having that conversation for the agency, talking to your end client, being like, how do we make this work so that our teams who are executing and activating on all this paid media have access to the right amount of data so we can make the right decisions in real time to drive better results. But something I tend to see, and it leads us to our next myth, is that there's still a big emphasis on last click. And I think because it's very it's easy to rely on, right? Like I think last click is almost like our industry's comfort zone. And sometimes people will say, oh, it's impossible to prove ROI outside the last click, especially if you want to go like CTV and upper funnel. And the truth be told is it's not really impossible. It's just a mindset, right? Like if we think about these things, there are so many tools and solutions out there that help prove ROI outside of just, a one-to-one user clicks then converts, but it's more of a deciding what is the right solution. Because I know recently in the last like 6 to 12 months, I've had a lot of conversations with many different clients, and MMM keeps popping up. And I'm like, MMMs have been around for a long time, but right now, because people are needing to show value, particularly agencies, especially with all the shifts in the industry at the minute, they're a little bit on edge, and I feel that. And ultimately, a lot of partners like Adswerve, like Google, want to help everybody because we can all figure it out if we put our heads together. But MMM is not the one size fits all solution. Google recently, obviously, we know, launched Meridian. Adswerve is a certified partner. It's super exciting. We've had a lot of people ask us about it, but it's also making sure that is the right solution for someone, because there are other ways where it's almost like a crawl, walk, run, because MMM is an investment. It's a change for an organization. I have a lot of clients who look first to, let's say, a multi-touch attribution model, which is still relevant, even though people were asking, with cookies going away, do we still need MTAs? Is it still going to work? Yes, it's still going to work. It still can be a really worthwhile investment and a baby step, if you will. The other thing I've seen a lot more recently is a surge in asks about incrementality testing. And I recently saw, and kudos to House Analytics, who did a great study on running all these incrementality tests across YouTube. And through 190 tests, they basically found out that YouTube was not being given all the credit that it was due. And it sometimes just needs everyone to think a slightly different way and have a methodology to see that there are channels that can have a profound impact on your return, can have a profound impact on your profitability. And it's just deciding which tools are ultimately going to be the right ones to invest in, whether you're agency and telling your client, hey, this is the right route, or if you're the end client who wants to kind of decide which methodologies they move forward with. But ultimately, it comes down to understanding that it's not just always about the last click. We need to look beyond, because if we don't, then we're always going to be stuck in the same bucket, and eventually there is a ceiling we're going to reach. So it's definitely something that I hope people kind of take to heart, and today is even a follow-up. Look to see what solution might be right for them to try next.
That's such a great point, Kelly. I just have to say that anytime I hear someone use just the last click model, I really shift in my chair. And I haven't got used to that. Absolutely haven't. Maybe there was a time when that just made sense, and there are parts of the businesses, parts of analysis where that makes sense. But when I think about last click, I like to use the soccer analogy, and thank you for putting this wonderful image out there. But think of the soccer game, right? Like the final goal is the last click, right? If you measure it through the last click attribution model. But what about the midfielder who made the crucial pass, or the defender who prevented the other team from scoring? So these are all vital to the outcome, even if they didn't directly score. So similarly in marketing, a customer might see a social ad, and then engage with a content piece, and then finally convert through a search ad. Attributing all the credit to the last search click misses the influence of those earlier touch points, and vice versa when we see, just one particular media being attributed all the credit. I just think that's a disservice to the overall marketing strategy, especially for customers who are playing in a space where they are using different channels to really reach their consumers and keep their consumers.
Yep. No, I completely agree. And I know, like, even with, we're talking GMP, there's obviously campaign manager, and there's a lot of capabilities that help people kind of paint that picture too. So I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Absolutely. And I think when this kind of takes us to our myth number 3. Let's see what that is. Let's reveal it. Okay. I'm surprised I'm talking on this topic, but Privacy changes, usually we hear is the end of effective measurement, right? I've heard this so many times, but hold on a minute, right? Like while the rule book on privacy is definitely being rewritten in our industry, we are all privy to it. It's not the final chapter of how to understand marketing or business impact. So think of it less like a meteor hitting measurement and more like needing to learn some cool new dance moves. I love dancing, so I'm sorry for that analogy. But for me, privacy preserving tech is stepping into, to help us groove to this new landscape.
Hmm.
Think of the fancy footwork with PII information with a stable ecosystem. You get the idea, right? Like for everyone who loves dancing. But let me stand corrected. For marketers in the room, or even for agencies in this on this webinar, this isn't just a footnote anymore. It's like becoming headline news. So I truly encourage that if you haven't already started playing around with aggregated and anonymous data solutions, please do digging into your own treasure trove of first party data, keeping an eye on those state privacy laws, which is so important for like driving consent mode on websites, and making sure that those consent boxes are crystal clear, because all of this really helps in building a solid trustworthy foundation for measurement that is respected by the user, respected by the audience, and just helps kind of bridge that gap.
Yeah. No, I think I when all these changes started to happen in the last, I want to say decade, I think it's really hard for our industry to change. I think nobody likes change, right? Like nobody, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? And I think privacy changes ultimately broke it on purpose because I think we do need to respect privacy, particularly of consumers. We need consumers, particularly in the world that we operate in. And, I implore people to talk to their partners. A lot of platforms, particularly Google, build out a lot of capability that support privacy measures, that give you the tools like measurement diagnostics and whatnot, pair. And it's important for everyone to know what tools they already have in their toolkit and what their partners can help them with, because a lot of partners and platforms are already doing the hard work for you. But it's important that, as you said, like people should understand like the state law implications, because unfortunately in the United States we're not at a disadvantage, but every state has a right to make their own privacy laws, which makes it complicated, especially if you're on the analytics side of the house. We empathize with you. You have a lot to consider when you're building that out, like CDPs and whatnot. But it's definitely something that I think people should be informed about, ask the right questions. And hey, look, if we look to the EU and GDPR, like it did not kill paid media. It just means we have to operate a little bit differently than we're used to, but it's a good thing. We'll evolve, we'll learn, we'll do better things. And ultimately, it just means a new way of operating that should work in all of our benefit. But the truth that it comes down to is all of these myths just show us that effective paid media measurement is very achievable. A lot of this is a mindset shift. And it's really just about knowing where to start and go next based on if you're the agency, based on your agency and how you're operating today. And if you're the marketer, it's of what makes sense for the business overall, what makes sense for your team. So let's kind of dive into the roadmap. And, roadmaps are great. They kind of help us decide where to go, where to start. And if we think about the now, it's really important to understand what the priorities are here, because if we're in the now, and I will say this, speaking to a lot of different agencies day in, day out, most people are here. So if you feel like you're behind, you're not. Nobody really has this all figured out perfect. Like I said, there's no perfect solution. It's all about evolution and working towards a goal. But the one thing I don't see people doing enough is really doing that audit, which Nerms, you mentioned earlier. Like people need to invest in taking the time to do audits. I know it's really hard because we're operating, and again, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If we're getting results, it's fine. We don't need to do an audit, but actually there's always something that we could do better, and we don't know what we don't know. So it's really important to stop and take a moment to do the audit, figure out what data you have, what you don't have, where the gaps are. I've had a lot of conversations with people recently about Campaign Manager who they don't have an ad server and they have data living everywhere, and as an agency, it's a complicated mess. there's so many tools out there, but you don't know what's going to be the right tool until you figure out what you're working with. But it's also about understanding, does this meet the needs of what my CMO or my end client wants? At the end of the day, it's very easy for us to just keep doing what we're doing because we believe it's the right thing and go based on assumptions. But it's really important to ask the question of, are you going to back this if we go forward with this? Do you believe in this? Are you investing in it as well? Because ultimately, we want to make sure the people who make the decisions and sign the checks ultimately say yes, and that we didn't do just all this work that's not going to go anywhere. Because especially with measurement, it's a lot of conversations, it's a lot of discovery. You don't want to keep going down a path unless you know that it's going to be, at the end of the day, you're going to have a solution in hand. And the last thing is that objective and KPI definition, having a goal, having a SMART goal. And the reason for this is because, yes, measurement will help you determine what channel drives better return on ad spend or profitability, but the goal should be related to you as the agency or you as the business. Are you as an agency wanting to build out a solution that you can recommend to all clients, or is this very specific to your end client who has long lead funnels and sales cycles, and you need to make sure that they have a better view of measurement for all the paid media activation you're doing? If we don't have a goal in mind, how are we going to know where we're headed? And you can't get to that next piece until you have done all these steps, really, because again, you're going to do all this work and it may not amount to something. But before we dive into the next, I do want to call out a great example of one of our clients, Avid, who did do this in a way that resulted in a pretty positive way. Avid knew from a goal perspective that they wanted to ensure that they could create a more cohesive view of their business using data. And they started off with a really strong foundation from an analytics perspective, which we all need a good foundation before we can build a castle or a house, right? And from there, they were able to build out a couple of different models, which I love this example because there's no one size fits all perfect solution. You're probably going to have a measurement solution that has multiple components to it. They had a churn propensity model so they could understand who in the next 4 weeks is unlikely to subscribe. They had a forecasting model, which if you have ever done forecasting, all of us who do forecasting would love a model just because it makes our lives a lot easier. It's kind of like a throw your finger in the air and see what sticks type of situation if you don't have that. And lastly, they had a media mix model. Again, MMM was a great option for them, but there's 3 things here. Essentially, they had an MMM to tell them, hey, these are the paid media channels that are going to give you the most return. But then they could also make sure that whatever customer came in, they could also guess if they were going to churn and utilize retention efforts to keep that client. And then they had the forecasting piece to determine growth. And ultimately, all of this gave them an ability to improve on what they were doing previously. So after just 3 weeks of missing their initial forecast, they were actually able to improve by 2% on their Q3 2024 revenue outcomes. So again, great example, 3-pronged approach. I've heard other clients say they have 3-pronged approach to measurement and just data and analysis, and I highly recommend an example like this if you're trying to figure out where do I go next, which I'm now going to pass over to Nerms, who is going to dive deeper into that with us.
First off, Kelly, that's a great example, and kudos if Avid has joined us on the webinar on accomplishing this, and of course for Adswerve for supporting them and helping them with resources and expertise. I do feel that that was probably not an easy journey, right? There's multiple audits required to even understand. If I go back to your slide of where you talked about the churn propensity model, really first understanding what are the data sources that are available, and are these data sources speaking the same language, between teams, and establishing that before you could even build a propensity model on top of that. I feel like that's already a very connected and a very, very advanced stage. And then based on that, really taking the next step forward and saying, let me also build some forecasting on top of that. If this is my source of truth and this continues to be the propensity with which I need to get more customers, how do I make sure I get more in that 12-month period? And of course, I feel that the addition of MMM, almost like complementing rather than just being the only solution, clearly helps outline what the next path for media marketing should be, what kind of channels should be used, and how they will kind of drive performance. I feel like it's a very holistic way of looking at measurement. So kudos to Avid for that. And thank you for sharing that with all of us, Kelly. So you are leaving me with a lot of fun now when we're talking about the next stage, which is like, think of it as like medium-term initiatives. And I always think like this is playing with some fun tools, right? For me, this is tool time. So number one is think of this stage as really upgrading your kitchen. I'm going to stick to the kitchen analogy a little bit. I watched Gordon Ramsay's videos a couple of days ago with my goddaughter, so that's stuck in my head. So now I just have to share that. So you wouldn't try to bake a gourmet cake with a spoon and a bowl, right? So it's the same thing with marketing. We need the right tools, and those right tools can be your foundational tools or slightly advanced tools like customer data platforms, as we call the CDPs, to organize all the ingredients that is essentially your data, your first party data, and then bring in powerful ovens like GA4, Adobe Analytics to bake those insights. So it's about finding the right appliances for your specific recipes. That's number one, to upgrading your kitchen. The second aspect in the next will be like dip a toe. I think Kelly, I heard you talk a lot about incrementality testing earlier. That's like doing a little taste test. Swirl off my tongue. Little taste test. So before you bake the whole batch, you try a small variation to see if it really makes a difference. Lightweight, but it gives you an initial sense of what's working. And I have to emphasize that incrementality testing without a clear hypothesis and goal can be very detrimental to the business. My third thinking here would be around exploring the recipe book. Advanced attribution is like looking beyond the basic recipes, right? Looking beyond just the leek and potato soup. I love leek and potato soup, so please don't take offense. But how do we now get to a little bit more complex soups? So multi-touch and marketing mix models, as you were saying, be it Meridian, be it others, are like those complex cookbooks that show how all these different flavors, which is i.e. marketing channels, combine to create that perfect dish. Fourth is now connecting the ingredients. So what I mean by that is data integration is like making sure all your ingredients are in the same kitchen. So think of your customer first party data, right? Think of CRM as your customer pantry, ad platforms as your delivery trucks, and email marketing, for lack of a better example, as your spice rack. All need to be connected so you can see the full picture of what you're cooking in that upgraded kitchen. And I think the last I would say, without forgetting, the crucial piece is privacy. As you were saying, Kelly, future-proofing your kitchen. Privacy testing is like installing a high quality air filter. It ensures there's no smell in your kitchen once you leave, right? No bad taste. And it ensures you can still cook delicious meals that is gather really crucial insights without compromising anyone's personal space, which is your consumers. So if I were to say this, like, think of upgrading your kitchen, which is tool time. Think about the tools. Think about incrementality testing as a taste test, advanced attribution, crucial data integration, and then privacy testing. And all of this essentially is in the marketer's domain, and marketers don't have to do this alone.
No, I agree with you, and I think that point nerves on privacy tech and the air filter. Just think about it this way: if you don't do that piece, your fire alarm's gonna go off. So, and nobody wants that, particularly as it pertains to privacy. So I think for everyone here, and again, this might seem like a long list, but it all works together. And if you have that goal in mind, these steps, it's easy to prioritize what tools ultimately make sense for your goals and what you're hoping to achieve.
Absolutely. And and I think if that takes us to our later stage, right? This is, if I were to stick to the kitchen and the cooking analogy, this is our long-term culinary vision, right? How do we put all of these advanced concepts now into action? And I know I'm representing Google, so I will have to drop this word AI. but I'm doing that because I truly believe in it, right? We've been living and breathing the AI space for a really long time, just with, as yourselves and our agency partners. So number one for me when it comes to the later stage is really leveling up with AI and automation. So think of AI less as a magic black box and more as your super efficient sous chef, right? If anyone is thinking of, I'm thinking of Ratatouille references right now, but tactically, this means exploring platforms that offer automated bidding adjustments, predictive analytics for audience segmentation, AI-powered insights for campaign optimizations. It can start as simpler and as tactically as in these platforms. So start by identifying things like repetitive tasks in your workflow, be it as a marketer or an agency, like reporting or basic campaign adjustments, where AI tools can free up your team's time for more strategic thinking. So if I have to give you an actionable step here, I would say, please go back and research 2 or 3 AI-powered marketing platforms and identify one pilot project to test, when it comes to automation bidding. And if you are a marketer or agency who's already using GMP, be it SA360, DV360, Campaign Manager, GA4, I highly urge you to really do an audit. Are you using these platforms to their full potential? And if not, why? And what are those features in these platforms? Do you know enough about them to be able to use them? So please ask your reps, ask your partner teams, your agencies, and if you're working with Adswerve, please ask your Adswerve team members as well. My second point is embracing cutting edge tech. I'll just get to the chase. It's like a savvy chef stays updated on the latest kitchen innovation. So we need to explore emerging technologies. For example, server-side tagging, right, offers more control over data collection, and it can over time improve data accuracy and also is very privacy compliant. So if I were to think about what could be an actionable step for our agency partners and our marketers here is dedicate time for your tech teams to kind of research the benefits and the implementation process of server-side tagging if you haven't thought about it. This goes a little bit beyond than regular tagging of your websites and your efforts, but really it helps you amplify anything you're doing across the marketing funnel. So that's my number 2 when it comes to later. Number 3, and I cannot stress enough about this, and my experience of supporting customers might be shorter than a lot of folks who are joining here, but I cannot stress enough about the fact that building an agile marketing kitchen is crucial, right? The food scene, if you will, the marketing landscape has changed so rapidly from when I started working in this industry, that our strategies need to be as adaptable as a chef adjusting a recipe based on available ingredients or a customer preference. So tactically, what this means is establishing a culture of continuous testing and learning. And Kelly, you hit the nail on the head earlier that you were saying that there is sometimes so much data.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear the same thing from clients time and again is we are drowning in data, but we are starving for insights. So this is it. Like, don't be afraid to experiment with new channels, with messaging or measurement approaches. And the actionable step here for you would be implement a regular A/B testing framework. And I know a lot of marketers and agencies here have JBPs with Google. If you do, please ask your your Google leads as to what kind of testing would you recommend when it comes to measurement? How can I simplify this? How do I establish a process of reviewing this performance data and making quick adjustments, to my customer strategy or my agency strategy? And last but not the least, just schedule some sort of innovative brainstorm. Marketers can bring their agencies, their tech partners, their Google partners, their other channels together to just brainstorm. Right? Like, we don't have to do this alone. And in today's world, we are not saying you're only working with Google. You're working with other partners out there. Like, could you bring all of them together to solve some of these challenges? And could be a fun pilot project. So,
go ahead.
All to say, Kelly, my key takeaway is don't try to cook everything and at a Michelin star level on day one with quite frankly, with a disorganized kitchen. I think we need to build a solid, strong foundation first.
No, I think that's a really great thought. And Nerves, to what you're saying about getting everyone in the room and brainstorming, you want to break down silos. Sometimes that requires to have everybody in the room because certain, especially with the way a lot of marketers and agencies operate, like you have so many different people involved in making sure everything runs so smoothly. And it's really important to have all of those individuals in one room to have that fresh perspective because, you know, you can't be agile if you don't have that bigger picture, clearer view. You just get kind of stuck in your own lane. So I completely agree with you. And I think, you know, for many that are still listening here, like all of these things, it's an investment. It's an investment in time and resource. And it doesn't always seem like everybody has that time to allocate, but I think it's something that's important to prioritize. And here at Adswerve, and I say this to my team and to our clients a lot, I'm like, we want you to go beyond basics. You're investing a lot of money into these platforms, into these tools. We don't want you to use them at their most basic capability because then why are you paying for them? Ultimately, us and Google want you to make use, especially of the GMP, to its full extent because that's how you're going to get the most return on it. And if we think about kind of what we've been discussing today, and before we really dive into Q&A, you know, we want to remind you all about some of the challenges you shared before we kicked off this session. We could move on to the next poll, I believe is slide. There we go. Oh, can you scroll up to the other poll? One before. Oh, here it is. Okay. Biggest measurement challenge today. Sorry, y'all. Attribution's still up there, Nerms. That's interesting. When everyone thought of measurement, they thought of attribution. So attribution is still one of the biggest one. CTV, ads, fragmentation, silos. I mean, we talked about all of these things today, right? And a lot of it, again, is going to go back to discovery. Like you want to figure out the right attribution model for you and your agency or you're the end marketer and client. You want to figure out how to show that CTV has a profound impact on your marketing efforts. It does take a little bit of conversation and that auditing and knowing what you have and the goal. But again, at this point where we all are in this industry today, measurement methodologies outside of the last click or outside of what we're just doing day in, day out, it's not a nice to have anymore. We ultimately need these things. They're essential. We all need to show up and show value. And in order to do that, we need to have that mindset of it is achievable, it is possible when it comes to measurement. It's now just about figuring out what your individual roadmap looks like and the steps that you need to take and working together. You know, we just talked about how it is important to get everyone in the room together. And it's especially important between agencies and their clients to sit in a room together and to talk it out with your partners, especially if there's gaps or if someone doesn't know something. So, you know, it's really important that everyone takes the time to do that because if you want to solve the attribution problem, you need to make sure you have all the right stakeholders in the room to have a discussion about what is achievable, what data you have access to, what tools do you currently have, because one team may have access to a tool and the other one had no idea. So it really starts with that conversation piece.
Absolutely, and I'm so happy seeing some of these. You know, when I look at this word chart, it's real. It's keeping it real, and I hope that, you know, our chat allows for that framework because sometimes that's what we are looking for, right? Like we're like, okay, where do we start? We have all of this. Where do we start? And I've often heard customers or agency partners say, you know, we don't even know which data to mine, you know, where to look or how to look at this data. And sometimes we brought the groups together in brainstorms and said how this one DMA information that's probably sitting somewhere on your website can help you reach the, you know, the right geographies, the right audiences. And it could be just that. Sometimes it's as simple as that, and sometimes it can be as complex as well. I'm using 5 different partners, 5 different services to reach my audiences. And then I also have traditional media and online media. Like, how do I connect the dots? So it can range from, from a very emerging stages of the conversation to a I don't know where that word came from, but to a very complex conversation as well. But just, I think, kicking off the conversation is what I highly encourage. And I think that brings us to the also to the point that, sometimes you might figure out that you don't have the right measurement solution. There could be 5 different things can work, and that's where the A/B testing comes into place. But my biggest pet peeve, if I can be that transparent, is not having a source of truth. That irrespective of the size of the business, small, medium, large, it truly doesn't matter. But knowing, you know, for the lack of better example here, let's say if you're only using Google Ads, is Google Ads conversion tracking your source of truth for everything you run on Google Ads? If you're a customer that is Google Ads plus GA4, is GA4 your source of truth, or Google Ads plus Adobe? Knowing what is your source of truth, and if you are a customer using SA360 DV, like, is Campaign Manager your source of truth? Are you tying it back to your CRM system, and how are you lead duplicating, what you're seeing as your media source of truth, of like how much clicks you're generating, conversions you're generating, how many sales you're actually having, and is there an interconnection between that click and that sale that you haven't joined yet? It's just a mapping exercise, to be honest, and it doesn't have to be a complex one to start with.
No, I completely agree. And, we hear from a lot of clients, they'll talk to us about, well, this partner is showing these numbers and this partner showing this. Discrepancy is one of the biggest issues sometimes in our industry. And a lot of times it's like, well, you just need a source of truth. You need to pick one. And it's hard to pick one, but there are so many incredible tools out there like Campaign Manager that do a really good job of being able to be that source of truth, or GA4, whatever. And it's just making sure that you have that, so you're not having to actually spend a lot of time solving discrepancy issues. So I completely agree with you there. Now, I am cognizant of time. Thank you all who've spent 45 minutes with us so far. Let's take some questions. Before we round out today, if anyone wants to submit any questions, we'll give it a minute or two. We're here to answer, and then we will wrap up after that.
And we have a couple of questions that we can start with. The first one says, I've heard a little bit about Google's new Meridian MMM tool. Can you tell me more? Where does that fit into the measurement roadmap?
Nirams, do you want to take that, or?
Sure, I can give it a go, and I would love, Kelly, your thoughts on it. And well, first of all, I'm just very excited that we have an MM tool within Google, because we do, it's such a helpful way of really assessing media performance. So for folks who don't know, Google Meridian is an open source, MMM, model marketing mix framework, that's designed to help advertisers like yourselves to measure the impact of marketing efforts, and especially across channels. How do you optimize budgets, forecast future performance? And if I were to, be bold enough to say, unlike maybe some of the traditional MMM models that I've worked with, where, it could be a little opaque and difficult to customize, what I have noticed or learned is that Meridian emphasizes on that transparency and that flexibility through its open source nature. Yeah. So, and I think, the question as to where does it fit into the measurement roadmap, I would say, it is a part of the evolution of, marketing measurement, particularly within the privacy safe landscape. So, think about, do you already have basic tracking and reporting in place? Are you focusing on fundamental metrics within the platform? Then yes, it makes sense. Do you have attribution modeling in place? Is that rule-based or algorithmic? It doesn't matter. Like, attempting to make sure that you assign credits to those different touch points, then MMM makes sense. You're doing incrementality testing, MMM makes sense. So integrated measurement approaches, if you have that, MMM makes sense. So it primarily falls under that stage, where I would say almost in the next phase. Kelly, let me know what you think. I feel like the now stage is really establishing the right data, stakeholders, and different tools and resources you have before you get to an MMM model, quite frankly.
No, I'd agree. And we've had a lot of conversations with clients who are very interested in Meridian. And usually during the discovery conversation, it's like, okay, well, actually, we need to do XYZ first before we actually go forward with something like Meridian. And if you have the data science resource in-house already, it is open source. Go ahead, give it a go, try it out. There are some requirements, though, in terms of data that you will need. So just keep that in mind. But my biggest thing, especially with MMMs in particular, and I know there's a few questions that have come up about MMM and stuff like that. Again, MMM is a great solution, as Nerms you just said. Like it makes sense only in certain veins. And the clients who I've seen use the MMMs the best have taken the time to go through other forms of attribution and figure out and getting their data to one place before they do that. Because if I speak to one of our data scientists about MMMs, they'll say getting the data is actually the hardest part of the MMM. It is not running the MMM, it is just getting all the data in one place. So just bear that in mind. There is a quick question here though, just about other thing, anything outside of MMM that is a great tool to use. I know a lot of clients use MTA models still. Like we said, incrementality testing has come up quite a bit. And that I think for a shorter term window also is really helpful. But Nerms, do you have anything that comes to mind in terms of outside of MMM, any initial thoughts on solutions you would recommend looking into?
I might get, this might sound controversial, but for me really is if I have a business, I would start with an attribution model. What's my source of truth? Attribution model. Is this attribution model really capturing different cross-channel environments, right? I might be spending on social, display video, email advertising, etc. Can this attribution model capture all these multi-touch moments that my consumer is going through, which by the way is not going through a linear pattern to reach the businesses or will reach my business, will use an unlinear way of connecting to me. I would start by setting up an attribution model and going from there.
Okay, no, that's great thought. Couple other questions. What's your best advice for customers who don't have a lot of media dollars and a big in-house team? How do you simplify that?
I work with mid-market customers who usually ask this question quite a lot, Kelly. So I'll keep it simple and go with bullet points. So first is start with clear goals, right? Defining what do you want your marketing to achieve: brand awareness, lead generation, online e-com sales, or in-store traffic. Then that's number one. That's my advice number one for customers who have limited dollars and limited resources. Then is focus on those core metrics. Like don't try to track everything. Identify 3 to 5 performance indicators that will reflect exactly what you've defined as your goal. So for example, is it CAC, customer acquisition cost, that you're most concerned about, and that's your goal? Or driving customer lifetime value, CLV? Or is it just website traffic and quality website traffic, or conversion rate? It's important to define that. And then is leveraging low-cost tools, whether that is just Google Ads or Campaign Manager, Google Analytics, just to ensure that you have all the pieces, whether that's social media platform, the email marketing, everything in one place, and just get the basic tracking right. I would say we can start there. That's and then setting up an attribution model on top of that.
Okay, no, that's great. I know in the past, in a past life, I worked with a lot of like mid-market clients as well, particularly the D2C space. And sometimes the best thing I saw was where they initially started off doing something like CAC, like new customer acquisition. That was their big focus. And eventually over time, they shifted to implementing a predicted lifetime value metric so that they could actually then push all their media channels into that and see, okay, which channel is going to bring a higher lifetime value of a customer, particularly if you're a company that works with subscription. Or you could also do it with like predict, which customers are going to drive more like higher cart values. There's a lot you can work with, and sometimes it's starting off small. And then once you feel really good in that spot, you can just evolve it to using some propensity or predictive modeling to help make that even stronger. So I think it's all very doable. And again, it's that prioritizing. Pick one and go from there. Build out your roadmap. Let me look at a few other questions here. Let's see. It looks like We have a few here. I'm just reading through them. Difference between incrementality and MMM, and when should I be using each one?
Kelly, did you want me to take that first?
If you want to take that first stab, I'm happy to follow.
Okay. Again, a question that kept me up at night a lot when, when we think about MMMs and, MMMs gaining popularity and use. I'm going to get a little bit technical here, but both are important when it comes to understanding marketing effectiveness, but they operate at different levels and they answer different hypotheses or address different hypotheses and answer different questions. So if I can define this, first of all, incrementality, it focuses on the causal impact of, a causal impact of, specific marketing activity. So when do you use incrementality testing is to understand true lift generated by a specific campaign, a channel, or any tactic, or to validate the effectiveness of a new marketing initiative or a new product launch, to optimize performance within a specific channel if you're testing different variables, whether that's creative, targeting, or a dynamic form or landing page, to get more precise understanding of ROI at the campaign level, or when you're trying to isolate a control group. So that's just some use cases for incrementality. When you think about marketing mix, however, or MMMs, however, they are more a tops-down statistical approach to analyzing the historical aggregated data. So when do you use MMMs in that case is to understand historical ROI of different marketing channels at an aggregated level, not just at the campaign level. When you want to optimize overall marketing budget allocation, because you have already done incrementality testing, you have the right foundation for measurement, and you can then use MMMs to think about how you're allocating across channels, forecasting future performance similarly, especially on spending, if you have different spending scenarios by channel, and sometimes also impact of non-marketing factors on your business, long-term strategic planning, and the value of different partners that you might be using, different MarTech, ad tech that you might be using. So I would say that in my mind, those are the key differences. Can you use both at the same time? Sure, as long as you have the right hypothesis in place, the right metrics in place, and the right timelines, and you know what you're measuring, what for, and how they connect.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. And I was talking to a client who recently started doing incrementality testing because right now they're limited to a window of, say, month ROAS. Like that's what they have to hit. And they were like, but does that make sense for what we're trying to do? They work within travel. And through some incrementality testing, they're like, actually, our window may need to expand. So incrementality great, I think, for things like that and understanding sometimes short term, or I've heard a lot of clients using it for like CTV in particular because they want to run these flights. They just want to see like, can CTV have an incremental uplift and everything else that we're doing? And then MMM kind of comes in because MMM is not something you pull every single day. Like it is very much more so you're more likely to have it on a quarterly level and understand like what is the true value of a channel that I'm putting media dollars into. And, it doesn't always get super granular either. So you can definitely have both. And I agree with you. Like, it's just a matter of like having the right, methodology and all that in place. But it's something that, it's always worth exploring. Again, is it worth it to you as the marketer, to you as an agency? But if I think about everything we've talked about today, and there is a really great question here about benefits of using the GMP if we weren't already. Let's maybe think about that in the frame of measurement. I think one of the things I really appreciate about the Google Marketing Platform is it's all connected. And I think people don't realize that like everything is truly connected. We talked a lot about data silos and breaking them down. What's better than having platforms that are incredibly integrated together? And if we look at like campaign managers, the Adswerve campaign manager has a ton of integrations out there too. So even if you're using other DSPs and platforms, it is integrated with those as well. So there's a lot of benefits if you're trying to help solve that data silo issue that GMP does help address. And it's just making sure you actually use that capability. But I don't know, Nerms, if you have any other thoughts on like the benefits of the GMP in that realm.
For sure, and I'm trying to avoid sounding self-serving here, representing the the Google business or the GMP business, but truly as a platform, when we think about full funnel marketing, you have your buying door, you have your ad serving, ad tracking, and then you have your your measurement and reporting and optimization framework. So you have all of that within GMP, right? You have your buying door with SA360, DV360. You have your campaign manager for your ad trafficking needs, and then you have GA4, and campaign manager and GA4 interchangeably can function as your measurement source of truth. And then it also allows you to bring data from your other channels. You might be using Adobe Analytics, you might be using your own in-house CRM systems. Just a one shop stop to just get your foundations going. And of course, if there are bigger and broader needs to connect with BigQuery and CDPs and data lakes and visualizing bigger sets of data, that can happen too. So the way I think about GMP is twofold. Do you want to know if your marketing has caused a business outcome? Second, yes, you can do that with GMP. Can you say how did each channel that you use contribute to overall outcomes? You can do that in GMP. So I think of GMP as that tool that is multifunctional, and sometimes it's for for most customers, and sometimes it just addresses parts of the need. So just have to explore it, like A/B testing.
Yep. No, for sure. Well, we're almost at the hour, so thank you to everyone who joined us today. We really appreciate it. If you have any more questions, please reach out, follow up. There at Adswerve, we also have some really great resources. We have a new ebook that's all about measurement that talks a lot about things we actually touched on today. Talk to your partners, talk to Google, talk to us. Measurement problems don't solve themselves in a day, but as we all talked about, it just starts with a conversation. So, and thank you again, Nerves, for joining me today. It was great to have you, and we hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week.
Thank you so much.